Today, we're really diving into a tension that I think defines so much of modern life. It's this struggle between, dedicated, messy, very human effort on one side.
And on the other, the smooth, super fast, kind of abstract power of the digital machine.
Precisely. And our lens for looking at this whole conflict is the production philosophy behind the John Wick movies.
Which is perfect because it's all driven by Keanu Reeves and director Chad Stahelski. And you have to remember, their whole journey together started way back on The Matrix, a film that was all about this very question of what's real versus what's simulated.
Absolutely. They're, you could say, veterans of this philosophical war. So our sources today, they're pulling back the curtain on the analog style, the just sheer physical work that goes into John Wick.
And we're setting that right up against the rise of AI, the kind of surprising comeback of analog computing, and even the global struggle for trust in this super high-tech world.
Yeah, so the mission really is to get to the bottom of why this belief in human commitment in these analog principles still has such a powerful hold on us. Why are we pushing back against digital everything?
Oh, what's the philosophy behind, the real glass-breaking, counting every bullet, the months and months of training?
It's a great question, and we've got a fantastic range of material to explore it, from really technical papers on chip design to critiques of digital life, and even deep dives into global crime and deep-sea engineering failures.
Wow.
But it all comes back to that same core tension. So let's start where it all begins, with Keanu Reeves' personal code of commitment.
Okay, let's do it. Because this isn't just a vague idea for him, right? He actually baked this philosophy into his contracts for the films.
He did. Our sources confirm this, and it's a huge deal. Reeves has a specific clause in his contracts that prevents his performance from being digitally manipulated without his permission.
So wait, this isn't just a standard thing that actors ask for?
Not at all. This is a philosophical line in the sand.
Yeah.
It's him saying, this performance, what my body does on camera, is final.
And there's a story behind it, isn't there? An origin story for this clause.
There is, yeah. He talks about an early movie he was in, probably late 90s, early 2000s. And in the scene, he's just, walking down the street. Pretty simple.
Okay.
Years later, the film comes out, he's watching it, and they'd added a tear to his face.
They CGI'd a tear onto his face.
In post-production, they digitally manufactured an emotional beat that he didn't perform. And his reaction wasn't even anger. It was more like existential shock.
I can imagine.
He just thought, huh. It was like, I don't even have to be here. And that was the moment, the realization that his physical artistic choice could just be overwritten.
That the emotion itself could be faked. That's a profound challenge to what it even means to be an actor, isn't it? If they can just paint on the feeling later, why bother showing up?
Exactly. And that deep, almost primal distrust of the digital stand-in, that's what shapes the entire aesthetic of the John Wick universe.
Director Chad Stahelski talks about this a lot. He calls their world hyper-real, but with a very strong analog sense.
Right. They're intentionally building this world with, as he says, old computers, old suits, old stuff. They're actively avoiding that sleek, futuristic, sci-fi digital look.
So it's not just a style choice. It's about grounding this crazy, over-the-top world in something tangible, something with rules.
It's grounded in physics and in commitment, even while they're creating what Stahelski calls a live-action anime. It's theatrical, for sure, but that theatricality is built on a foundation of brutal, physical reality.
And the proof of that reality is the training. The sources go into incredible detail about this. They have a name for it, right?
We do. They call it reality plus 10%.
Reality plus 10%. I love that.
The 10% is the cool camera angles, the style, the flair. But the reality part, that has to be 100% absolute.
And to get that reality, they brought in the best, Taron Butler.
A living legend in the shooting world.
Yeah.
A 14-time three-gun champion. We're talking rifle, shotgun, pistol.
Yeah.
The man is a master. And this wasn't about making Keanu look good.
No, it was about making him be good.
It was about achieving total unconscious muscle memory mastery. They drilled him relentlessly on tactical skills. Not the big, flashy Hollywood stuff, but the messy, real-world problems.
Like what?
Like knowing how to clear a jam in the gun, how to do a speed reload under pressure, how to fix a malfunction without even thinking about it. These are physical problems with physical tools.
And that commitment to the physical, to the analog, it went to a level that is just, it's kind of crazy for a big-budget action movie.
It is. They were literally counting the rounds in every single magazine on set.
You're kidding.
Not at all. The sources are really clear on this. You are bound by the physical limits of the weapon in your hand.
So if a standard AR magazine holds 30 rounds.
And John Wick fires 30 rounds, and then he has to stop and do a full physical reload, right there on camera. Same for his pistol. A Glock with an extension holds 18 rounds. They stick to that, exactly.
And think about what that does for you as an audience member. The second you see him do that real tactical reload, you start to trust the world of the film.
You do. Even when the action gets completely insane, that little bit of reality anchors everything.
It's such a huge contrast to the action movies we grew up on.
They bring up John Woo movies, which they love, but, the rules are different there. It's more of the ballet.
Right. The hero has a pistol with an 8-round magazine.
And he fires 46 shots without breaking a sweat. In John Wick, that just doesn't happen. The laws of the physical world have to be respected.
So if the rule is reality, then the currency of that reality is pain, the physical cost.
It has to be. The long, complicated, continuous takes they're famous for. That's what sells the violence as hyperreal. And our sources really drive home just how much that physically costs.
Like the glass house sequence.
From Chapter 2, yeah. An incredible fight inside this structure, made of mirrors and glass. Stahelski said they only had enough glass sets for maybe 2 takes.
But they usually nailed it on the first try.
They did. But nailing it on the first try still means your body is taking the full force of that choreography. That shoot lasted 9 days.
9 days.
And people on set saw Keanu get physically thrown into those glass cases and hit the concrete floor 7 or 8 times, over and over. That's not a digital effect. That's just sustained, calculated punishment.
You absolutely cannot fake that. You can't add that texture in with a computer. And that demand for authenticity, it spreads to everyone involved.
Oh, for sure. The story of how Halle Berry got cast in Chapter 3 is the perfect example. She didn't wait to be asked.
She went after it.
She literally went to Stahelski and said, "I'm a huge fan. I want to be in your movie." She said she'd take any part. She didn't care about the script or the character's name. She just wanted to be part of that process.
And she showed up ready to work.
That's the key part. She showed up in immediate, incredible physical condition. She met the standard. It's a total rejection of the idea that an actor just shows up and the VFX team cleans up the mess later.
And all that physical commitment, it forces a different kind of creativity, right? It forces messy human collaboration.
No question. Take the mirror room sequence in Chapter 2. Stahelski flat out called it the most difficult creative challenge they'd ever faced.
Why, though? Because of the reflections.
Exactly. You're not just filming a fight. You're filming reflections of reflections of reflections into infinity. So the production designer, the cinematographer, the stunt team, they all had to completely rethink how to film action.
Because the main problem is hiding the crew.
Hiding the entire crew. The cameras, the lights, the cables, 20 crew members. How do you hide all of that when you're looking into an infinite mirror? You can't just digitally paint them out later, because that completely defeats the purpose of the long single take.
So how did they figure it out?
The old-fashioned way. They describe the rehearsal process as goofy. Just stunt guys walking around, holding mirrors, trying to see where the reflections landed.
So physical trial and error.
Total trial and error. They said they found some of the best solutions purely by accident. It wasn't some clean, perfect, coded solution. It was messy people moving messy props around a room.
And Stahelski's quote about it is so telling. He said, "We really have to think. We can't just wing it."
That says it all. That is the analog commitment. It takes intense, brain-breaking human problem-solving. It takes collaboration, and it takes accepting that the answer might come from a happy accident, not a render button.
But here's the tension, the friction. This whole world that Reeves is fighting for, this world built on physical cost and real-world physics, is running straight into an ecosystem that is increasingly defined by the digital surrogate.
And that takes us right into our second section, the digital surrogate. We're looking at how AI isn't just touching up performances anymore. It's synthesizing creativity from scratch and potentially replacing the human artist altogether.
And even the John Wick franchise itself isn't totally immune to this, is it?
It's not. Stahelski admitted that for Chapter 4, they did use some AI-generated digital art for certain background elements. He said the younger staff, they're really into that world.
But he put a big condition on it.
A huge one. And this is where the philosophy holds. He stressed that the human artist must control the choice behind it. The AI can generate 100 ideas for a mosaic on a wall, but the human has to provide the intention. The human makes the final choice. The why still has to come from us.
Keanu himself talked about this, about AI scriptwriters like ChatGPT. He seemed kind of intrigued by it.
He was. He said he found the idea of it synthesizing ideas cool, because In a way, that's what artists do. We're all just remixing our influences.
Then he gets to the crucial point.
He zeroes right in on it. He asks, what's the intention behind that synthesis? A human artist synthesizes based on life experience, emotion, a political point of view. AI synthesizes based on statistical probability. The motivation, the soul of the art, that's the part that's missing.
And this panic, this fear of machines replacing artists, it's not new at all.
Not even close. If you look at the anxiety around AI art generators like Midjourney today, you see these incredible historical echoes, specifically with the invention of the daguerreotype, an early photograph back in 1839.
The disruption must have been immense.
It was immediate, and for a lot of artists, it was terrifying. Suddenly, a machine could capture reality with a precision that painters took years to master, and it could do it in minutes.
There's that famous illustration from the time, right?
La daguerreotypomene. It shows these crowds of people going crazy for photo studios, and in the background, you see traditional artists just hanging themselves from gallows.
So the panic was real.
Oh, completely. The famous French painter Paul Delaroche, a big academic artist, supposedly saw a daguerreotype for the first time and just cried out, "From today, painting is dead."
Because their whole value system was threatened. The skill they spent a lifetime acquiring could suddenly be done by a rank amateur with a box.
Their value felt like it had been completely usurped. But what actually happened? History shows photography didn't kill painting at all.
It liberated it.
It was the ultimate liberation. Artists were suddenly free from the boring task of having to perfectly replicate reality.
And photography actually became an inspiration for modernism. Painters started exploring blur, weird compositions, the way light hits things, all the accidental stuff a camera captures.
Exactly. You see it in Monet, in Degas. They absorbed the language of the camera and used it to create something entirely new, a higher form of expression.
Okay, but the big difference today is the sheer scale and speed of it all.
That's the crucial difference. We're not talking about a few artists slowly adopting a new technology. The data we have is staggering. On platforms like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, DLE, humans are co-creating over 20 million images every single day.
20 million a day. That number is hard to even comprehend.
And that brings us to Keanu's deeper concern, which isn't just about the art itself. It's about economics. It's about the economic anxiety. He says it very clearly. He's afraid that the people paying artists, the studios, the corporations, would rather not pay you.
They're looking for a way around the artist.
In his words, they are actively seeking a way around the human creator. And why? Because, as he says, humans are messy, and people in power don't want that.
Humans negotiate. Humans have bad days. Humans unionize.
Right. If you can swap out that complicated, messy human for an efficient, obedient AI model that never sleeps, the economic incentive is just overwhelming.
And you see that anxiety playing out everywhere, not just in Hollywood. The sources brought up the staff at Wired magazine deciding to unionize.
Yeah, and when Reeves heard about that, his reaction was so telling. It was pure John Wick philosophy. He said, "That's cool. See how long that lasts." Fingers crossed.
It's an acknowledgement that this is a constant fight, a constant battle for the value of human labor against the relentless push for optimization.
The machine will always be looking for a cheaper, faster way.
So if fighting the digital machine head-on is this exhausting, endless battle, maybe the answer is to retreat, to double down on the analog world itself.
And that's exactly what we're seeing. Our sources point to this incredible counter-revolution that's happening not just in culture, but in the most advanced, complex areas of computing.
Which brings us to Section 3, the analog counter-revolution in tech and culture. And it starts with a huge engineering problem.
A very physical, very analog problem.
Yeah.
Energy. Power consumption.
The numbers here are just startling. The human brain, this incredibly complex organ, runs on about 20 watts of power.
The same as a dim light bulb.
Yeah.
It's ridiculously efficient. But if you ask a modern digital supercomputer to run the same kind of complex AI application,
You're talking about megawatts of power. It's a completely different scale.
it is. The sources basically argue that for the kind of truly advanced AI we want to build, the pure digital approach is a dead end. It's just not sustainable. It's not going to work. It's not a smart way to do it.
So we have to find a better path. And that path, weirdly enough, leads backward. It leads back to analog.
To analog computing, we're seeing this revival of the analog chip.
Yeah.
Companies like Mythic are creating what they call an AI analog matrix processor, and it uses a fraction of the power.
Okay, so for you, the learner, we need to break down how this actually works because it gets to the core problem with digital computers.
Right. So in your standard digital computer, you have the processor, the CPU, and you have the memory, the RAM. Every single calculation means data has to be physically moved back and forth between those two places.
And that moving back and forth, that's what uses all the energy. It's like a massive logistics operation inside the chip.
A very costly one. So the innovation with these new analog chips is something called compute in memory.
So the calculation happens right where the data is stored.
Exactly. It cuts out the commute. And here's the really clever analog part. Instead of storing data as perfect digital ones and zeros, they use flash memory that can hold a whole range of continuous voltages.
Up to 256 different levels.
Right, so it's not on or off.
Yeah.
It's spectrum, which is much more like how a neuron in a biological brain works. It's more nuanced, and it's way, way more energy efficient.
You're trading that absolute digital precision for analog efficiency.
And this idea, it's not entirely new. The sources trace it back to an engineer named Glenn Cowan, who built a powerful analog chip way back in 2003.
And his insight was that it didn't have to be one or the other, right? Not analog versus digital.
Precisely.
Huh.
His goal was to create a hybrid. The analog system could run the numbers and come up with a really good approximate answer very quickly using very little power.
A good guess.
A good guess. And then you feed that guess into the digital computer, which can then find the perfect, precise answer much, much faster. It's the best of both worlds.
This is the idea behind the hybrid digital analog computer, the HCDC. The physical world is messy and analog. You need a hybrid system to talk to it efficiently.
But here's the catch. To build these new analog-inspired systems, you need a different kind of knowledge, a kind of knowledge that's becoming rare.
You need a deep, deep understanding of mathematics, specifically.
Differential equations,
Yeah.
which is the language of change in the physical world.
Yeah.
It's how you describe fluid dynamics, heat transfer, motion, all the messy, continuous stuff.
And our sources found that there's a real knowledge gap here.
A significant one.
Yeah.
They said when they submit papers on these hybrid systems, some of the peer reviewers admit they haven't seen differential equations in years. Some have never seen them at all.
Wow. So the digital revolution, with its focus on clean code and abstract data, has accidentally created a blind spot.
We've become so good at the abstract
Yeah.
that we're losing the language to efficiently describe physical reality.
That is fascinating. And you see that same kind of resistance to the purely digital, the purely abstract in our own lives, which brings us to things like the dumb phone movement.
The dumb phone movement is just people actively choosing to strip back their smartphones. Grayscale screen, delete all the apps, just calls and texts.
And there's a real anxiety around doing that, isn't there?
There is. It's this anxiety of dumbing down your phone because we've started to equate digital smartness with being a virtuous or productive person. Choosing a simpler phone feels like you're downgrading yourself in the eyes of society.
When really it's just a desperate attempt to reclaim your own mind.
And when we try to solve the mental health problems that digital life creates, we often just turn to more digital solutions, like all the mental health apps.
And the critique there is that they just make the problem worse.
They intensify the disunity they're supposed to fix. They take something that should be done for its own sake, like going for a walk or meditating, and they turn it into a task, something to be measured and optimized.
Right. You're not meditating for peace. You're meditating to improve your readiness score on an app.
It's a utilitarian mindset taking over something that should be an escape from that. It's a digital solution for a problem created by our digital obsession with optimization.
It's that old Freudian idea, right? New technology just solves the problems created by the last technology.
Exactly. The jet plane creates the problem of missing your family, so the telephone solves that. The solution just reinforces the original disruption.
And to step even further outside that digital loop, you have people exploring what our sources call psychedelic ontology.
This is the ultimate analog investigation. It's about using chemistry to probe the nature of reality itself.
And the experience often lines up with what simulation theorists talk about. The world can feel glitchy.
Yeah, the colors feel a little off, or patterns seem to repeat in an unnatural way. It fundamentally challenges that rigid separation we make between our minds and the world, between waking life and dreams.
It suggests our consciousness might be most real, most unfiltered, in those in-between states.
And one of the most common takeaways from these experiences is what the sources call a vastly expanded social ontology.
Meaning you feel connected to everything.
To everything. The world suddenly appears as this huge community of beings, not just humans, but trees, clouds, animals. Everything feels alive and interconnected in this messy analog system.
The point isn't that this is the final answer, but that it helps you dwell in that uncertainty with greater ease. It's an embrace of the messy, complex, glorious imperfection of it all.
Which is a perfect transition to our fourth section, where we look at the very high, very real cost of digital sophistication on a global scale and the absolute non-negotiable need for human accountability and analog trust.
Let's start on the dark side of that. The rise and fall of Alphabet, the world's biggest dark web market, and its founder, Alexander Causes. Alpha 2.
Cause built a digital masterpiece of crime. Alphabet was doing between $600,000 and $800,000 in sales a day.
Wow.
He was living this life of extreme digital wealth. Lavish homes in Thailand, a dark gray Lamborghini Aventador. He was a digital ghost who had built a perfect, secure online world.
But the takedown of this massive digital empire, it didn't come down to cracking his code.
No. It hinged on a very simple, very physical, very analog problem. They had to get his laptop while it was open and unencrypted.
If they just raided the house and he'd close the lid, they've got nothing.
Nothing. The data would be locked away forever. So they needed to catch him in the act.
Yeah.
The human had to be physically interfacing with the digital system.
And what led them to him in the first place? It wasn't some brilliant hack. It was human error.
It was pure human vanity. His operational security was almost perfect, but he couldn't resist bragging. He was on this alpha male forum, Roosh V, under the username Romeo.
And he just laid out his whole life.
His whole life. His work schedule, his cars, his lifestyle. An investigator was able to map out his entire analog day just from his posts. And even worse, his personal email address was linked to the site's administration.
So the perfect digital criminal was betrayed by the messy, analog human need for validation.
Completely. The same guy who built this brilliant digital empire was fired from previous jobs for things like excessively eating on the job. The physical self will always betray the perfect digital self.
And that need for human trust and accountability, it's just as critical in the legitimate world, especially in the most advanced industry there is, semiconductors.
Building silicon chips, especially at a place like TSMC in Taiwan, is an act of incredible international cooperation, built on a foundation of human trust.
The chairman of TSMC, Mark Liu, said there are two qualities that define their workforce above all else: curiosity and stamina.
And by stamina, he means the sheer, relentless human endurance it takes to maintain microscopic precision. 2047. It's a job that demands this difficult, constant analog focus.
And to make chips for companies all over the world, you need what they call a rules-based international order. You need trust.
You absolutely have to. It's what they call trusted technology. Countries and companies with totally different ideologies have to trust each other, not to cheat, not to install backdoors. The physical hardware is only as reliable as the trust between the humans who made it.
And when we push that technology into the most extreme physical frontiers, the risks are just enormous and very, very analog.
The story about the deep-sea mining trial is a perfect illustration of this.
This is the effort to harvest these metal-rich nodules from the ocean floor.
It's an incredibly high-tech operation. And our sources detail this test run with a collector vehicle called the Britannia II. It weighed 35 tons. It's the size of a small house.
And this whole sophisticated machine is connected to the ship on the surface by just one thing.
One critical lifeline, a 3-mile-long umbilical cable made of Kevlar stuffed with fiber optics and copper wire. That's it. That's the only link between the machine and its human operators.
And during a test, as they were pulling it back up,
when it was just 50 feet from the surface after all that work, the cable snapped.
And the physical world just took over.
Instantly. The 35-ton machine with no power, no connection, no human control just spiraled all the way back down 3 miles to the bottom of the Pacific.
The cost of that one analog failure must have been astronomical.
And the human cost, too. An engineer called the 2 days they spent trying to remotely reattach the cable an emotional roller coaster. It just shows that no matter how good your digital control system is, the physical world is brutal. When that analog connection breaks, the consequences are immediate and messy.
So, as we bring all this together, there's this really clear line that connects Keanu Reeves' contract demands all the way to a snapped deep-sea cable.
There really is. His dedication to the physical analog performance in John Wick, the real bruises, the counted bullets, the messy human-led choreography, it's a perfect microcosm of this bigger societal fight against pure abstraction.
Whether you're talking about filmmaking or designing energy-efficient chips or the downfall of a dark web kingpin because of his ego.
Or the physical limits of a Kevlar cable.
Yeah.
There is this constant recurring need to keep a handle on the technology, to demand human authenticity, and to resist being totally swallowed up by the digital world.
The machine offers perfection, efficiency, and obedience.
And the analog world delivers authenticity, trust, endurance, and physical truth. But it's often through a lot of effort and a lot of necessary messiness.
Keanu's fear that people in power would rather not pay you because humans are messy it sums up the entire conflict.
The digital machine wants the output, the art, the data, the result, but without the inconvenient, complicated human that has to create it.
But all of our sources seem to suggest that embracing that messiness, that might be the entire point. That might be the only real way forward.
Right. To understand the physical world, you need the hard math. To achieve greatness, you need the stamina, the endurance, the willingness to feel pain. To understand yourself, you have to be willing to confront uncertainty.
And this endless pursuit of efficiency and growth, Moore's law, the promise of fusion energy, it's all driven by what TSMC's chairman called a piece of shared optimism, a grand human vision.
So our final provocative thought for you to think about is this. If the machine is always striving for perfection, and perfection leads us further into the abstract digital realm, where does the human being find lasting value?
The sources told us one story about a man who installed solar panels on his house and suddenly had so much extra energy he didn't know what to do with it. He went from feeling guilty and weird to devil-may-care.
He found peace not in digital scarcity and optimization, but in messy, glorious analog abundance. So maybe the true human resistance isn't about stopping the machines at all. Maybe it's just about fully embracing the abundant, imperfect, and messy reality of our own analog existence.
Something to ponder as you log off. And go find some of that analog messiness for yourself. This has been The Deep Dive.
We hope you feel thoroughly well informed.